When it comes to horse racing, you can never have too much information. With TwinSpires, you can place your bets with confidence, whether you use handicapping insights like our Brisnet speed ratings, prime power and past performances, the guidance of our experts' top picks, or just choose a name that catches your eye. Yes! No matter how you pick your horse, bet with TwinSpires. And now you can share the thrill with friends using our exclusive Bet Share feature.
Welcome back to the TwinSpires Racing Roundtable. I'm Ashley Anderson here with James Scully and Vance Hansen. Today we'll be talking the Preakness Stakes, other stakes action from Pimlico, and what else caught our eye from the racing action this weekend. And Vance, let's start off with the 149th running of the Preakness Stakes, won by Dwayne Lukas for the 7th time, denied Mystic Dan the second leg of the Triple Crown. And where do you rank this win for Dwayne Lukas now with a 7th win at the age of 88 years old?
Well, I think it was Woody Allen who famously said something to the effect that 80% of success is showing up. And if there's one thing that Dwayne Lukas has been known for nearly 5 decades in the thoroughbred business, he's going to show up in these races. You know, whether his horses look plausible on paper or not, Wayne is going to be there. He's going to be in the arena. Now, this ambitious placement generally doesn't work out, and a lot of his horses have had shortened careers because of it, but occasionally it does work like a broken clock. Not many people fancied Seize the Gray going into the Preakness, myself included, but the combination of an off track and the lack of other speed and a modest field by historical standards was pretty much enough to give Lukas his 7th Preakness win and his 15th win in a Triple Crown race, as you said, at the age of 88. My hunch is that Seize the Gray in the end is not going to stack up with the very best of Lucas's best classic winners. He'll probably kind of fit alongside Oxbow, the 2013 Preakness winner, and Commendable, the 2000 Belmont Stakes winners, both of whom didn't look like solid prospects on paper, but both of them also kind of took advantage of favorable pace scenarios. More on Lukas, when I started following the sport nearly 40 years ago, he really was the man. And it's still fun as ever to see him in the winner's circle after a big race. He's long since dropped the 4 or 5 figure, stopped wearing the 4 and 5 figure suits for more comfortable clothing, but he remains as quotable as ever. He's never stopped coaching, and he still has a lot left to teach in this game, James.
Yes, I thought that Seize the Gray's win was very special for Dwayne Lukas. And, whether it's Jack Nicklaus coming from behind to win the 1986 Masters at age 46, or George Foreman reclaiming the heavyweight title at age 45, it's emotional when a living legend like Dwayne Lukas wins the Preakness at age 88. He easily surpassed Sonny Jim Fitzsimmons, who at 82 had been the oldest trainer to win a Triple Crown race. And the fact of the matter is that, Lukas is one of the all-time greats, a true ambassador for thoroughbred racing. There wasn't a dry eye, I don't believe. I would be surprised if there were many in that winner circle, because he has so much respect. And the thing about Lukas is that his success, his real heyday was in the 80s and 90s. From 1985 to 1995, Dwayne Lukas won 4 Eclipse Awards and 9 Triple Crown race wins. He won 3 Derbies, 3 Preaknesses, 3 Belmonts. He was firing on all cylinders, winning races coast to coast, leading the nation in earnings and other statistics. And from 2013, which had been his previous Triple Crown race win via Oxbow in the Preakness, from 2013 to 2024, he only had 2 starters in the Kentucky Derby. He hadn't had a starter in 6 years before Just Steel ran this year. And I thought his career, I think argument could be made that his career was on the tail, was declining. His horses, he didn't have the same stock. I thought it all turned around when Secret Oath won the 2022 Kentucky Oaks. That really reinvigorated both Lukas and owners and new owners buying like new young promising horses at sales. He's totally improved his stock significantly over the last 2 years. Seize the Grays is from the last crop of Arrogate, who was like a really unfortunate that he passed away, because he was like one of the greatest sires, in my opinion, in the last 20 years in America, and he left us too early. But and one other thing I'll make about Lukas, if you listen to him talk, he is still always excited about the future. He talks about next year. He talks about his 2-year-olds. He talks about next year's Derby. I just think he's a real gem, Ashley, for the sport of thoroughbred racing.
And also, this is certainly one of his more memorable Preaknesses, especially for me because I wasn't born yet for 2 of them. But he's been racing since 1981 with his first ever Preakness in 1980. And speaking of showing up, Vance, he's saddled more horses than any other trainer in the Preakness, his 149-year history with 48. Most people are looking at Just Steel in this field over Seize the Gray, but of course got the job done. And on the flip side of Dwayne Lukas being 88 years old, Jaime Torres is 25, just recently graduated jockey school, and then comes out in his first Triple Crown start and wins with Seize the Gray. So kind of just unprecedented in some ways in the way that this win came about. And my racehorse, the ownership group, we had about 2,500 people with a share of Seize the Gray. So that was also an interesting thing to see with this particular Preakness win. So it's going to be one I'm going to remember for a long time, that's for sure. Well, let's move over to the other stakes action at Pimlico this weekend. So James, what else stood out to you from the stakes action?
I want to mention Shotgun Hottie on Friday. I thought she was very impressive, winning the Allaire DuPont Distaff. She generated a career best 103 Bristnet speed rating for the 5 3/4 length victory. And to me, this 5-year-old daughter of Gun Runner is a candidate to keep progressing, moving forward off of this win for Cherie DeVoe, who had a terrific weekend. Vance will talk about DeVoe, but Shotgun Hottie started to come around, I thought, last summer. She finally found her best form, winning the Ladies' Secret and then winning the Molly Pitcher at Monmouth Park. And then after she won that latter event, she went to the sidelines, wasn't seen again until this year. She came back at Oaklawn Park, recorded a couple fourths, but it was 3 unplaced efforts in stake races. And to say she rebounded from those performances would be an understatement on Friday. I think it might be a case where Shotgun Hottie just didn't like Oaklawn Park per se. They redid the track this year. I don't think it was her favorite surface. I'll bring up a former Allaire DuPont Distaff winner. In 2015, Stop Charging Maria rebounded from 2 consecutive losses to win the Allaire DuPont Distaff at Pimlico. She went on that year to win the Breeders' Cup Distaff at Keeneland. And the one thing about Stop Charging Maria is that she was winless at Belmont Park. 0 for 3. She didn't like that surface as much as she liked Saratoga, Keeneland, Pimlico, and others. I think Shotgun Hottie might be in that same kind of boat where she didn't like Oaklawn this year, and those races are a little bit of a misnomer on our PPs, and I think that the DuPont Distaff might be the springboard to bigger and better things, Vance.
Yeah, I wanted to bring up another Cherie DeVoe horse on Friday. She Feels Pretty, who laid over the field on paper in the Hilltop Stakes on the turf, but even I was impressed by the ease at which she won, at the way she humiliated her rivals in her season debut. She won by 5 3/4 lengths. She had won the Natalma Stakes at Woodbine last fall, and then was favored in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies Turf at Santa Anita, and ran a good race, but not her best when she finished 3rd that day. Cherie DeVoe said she was going to ship from Keeneland and spend the summer in New York. She's presumably going to target races like the Belmont Oaks and Saratoga Oaks. But DeVoe said her primary goal this year will be back at Keeneland in the fall in the Queen Elizabeth II Challenge Cup. And I think given what we saw at Pimlico on Friday, it's going to be really exciting to see her run this summer and fall, Ashley.
I just want to add, I love the decision to run her at Pimlico instead of in the Edgewood, because that's a race that fillies coming back, they never win it. horses coming off of a long layoff never win that. We saw Hard to Justify, who beat She Feels Pretty, run like mid-pack. So Cherie DeVoe made the right decision, and I agree with everything else Vance said.
Well, speaking of She Feels Pretty and the Hilltop, John Velasquez got a win with this particular runner. And then in the big event on Friday, got a win with Gunsong and the Black Eyed Susan. It was his 5th win in this particular race, which is a new record for the Black Eyed Susan. And Gunsong now is 3 for 6 for her career with a 2nd and a 3rd, had a 94 Bristnet speed figure and a career best 119 class rating. And then to bring it back with the Dwayne Lucas connection, trainer Mark Henning got his first win in the Black Eyed Susan and was a former assistant for Dwayne Lucas. So kind of a big weekend all around for Dwayne Lucas by proxy too, with the Black Eyed Susan as well. And then, of course, John Velasquez, he had a 2nd in the Alaire DuPont. So a pretty good Friday overall for one of the top jockeys around. Well, there was some other stakes action, and not just at Pimlico, but some other things happening over the weekend. So Vance, I think you're sticking with Pimlico here, but what else caught your eye?
Well, we've mentioned Cherie DeVoe a couple of times already, and she just had an outstanding day at Pimlico on Friday. We've mentioned She Feels Pretty in the Hilltop. We've mentioned Shotgun Hottie in the Alaire DuPont, but she also won the Pimlico Special with the stakes debuter named Pyrenees, who put in a mild upset victory over the odds-on favorite Kingsbarns. And all of this success at Pimlico came just 2 weeks after DeVoe won her first Grade 1 in the U.S. With Vava in the Derby City Distaff at Churchill Downs. Of course, I said she had won. Of course, I mentioned earlier that She Feels Pretty had won the Grade 1 Natalma at Woodbine in Canada last summer, but the Derby City Distaff was DeVoe's first Grade 1 in the U.S. This is only DeVoe's 7th year as a licensed trainer. She spent a number of years as an assistant to Chad Brown and Chuck Simon, so she had been around top-level horses for quite a long time before going out on her own. She's one of the rising stars in the training ranks, and she really figures to be a face in the sport for many years to come, James.
Oh, yeah, and her stock, she's got a lot of good young horses as well. I agree with that sentiment about DeVoe. And my what else is going to be on just the business side of it. Well, first off, I'm just going to mention 2 weeks rest from Kentucky Derby Day and the Preakness, top 3 finishers. The 4 horses in the field coming back off a 2-week rest, and they ran 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 5th. So horses can easily hold their form off of 2 weeks rest, as this year's Preakness showed. That's no problem. I think for most trainers and owners in the sport, Brad Cox ran 3rd with Catching Freedom off of a 2-week rest. But the business was strong. Saturday's 14-race program did $99.64 million in total handle, including $57.93 million. I'm in my 50s. I've been following racing for more than 40 years. And as far as modern era, which I think I've been part of most of it, the Preakness is always going to pale in comparison a little bit to the Derby Day and to the Belmont Day. For as long as I can remember, people have been complaining about Pimlico being a dump and this, that, and the other. But business continues to be strong there. And their biggest challenge in my mind is just field size. Handle was up pretty good from last year on the race itself, because last year they had 7, this year they have 8. They get a 10-horse field in the Preakness, Ashley and Vance, and they're going to be, setting new handle records, because the business will be there 2 weeks after the Derby. The current model works. That's the last thing in horse racing anybody needs to worry about, are the spacing of the Triple Crown races, Ashley.
And if I could just interject here, and I take all of your points, James. And the one thing that hurt Pimlico on Saturday, total handle was down a little bit from last year's Preakness card, but that had to do with the weather. They lost a couple of grass races on the card. There were scratches throughout the program because of the sloppy track and because the turf course was pretty much a bog. But besides all of that, all of your points are valid. This is a top 5 betting handle day, year in and year out, every single season in racing, and I think they would just simply jeopardize it by moving the date of this race.
It's always interesting to see the odds change too with the Preakness. I feel like it's never close to the morning line. Uncle Heavy went off at, I think, 7-1 after being 20-1 on the morning line. And it's always interesting to see the fluctuation with that. Did any of y'all have Seize the Gray in your exotics or anything like that?
No, I was right about him setting the pace. I had heard some people speculating about Imagination being on the lead, but I 100% thought he'd be on the lead, trying to steal it, and that's what he did.
I was one of those that speculated about Imagination, and I was.
And I give Mystic Dan credit for making a run at him at the top of the stretch. He got like within a length, and it looked like he had every chance. And Cece Gray just had a little bit more horse left, and Mystic Dan just couldn't go on with that run. But I thought it was a good ride by Brian Hernandez. He gave the horse every chance, and he was just second best.
Do you all give Seize the Gray a chance in the Belmont, especially with it being 1.25 miles this year? You think he can come back and win if he does show up?
You know, I'm inclined right off the race to say no, but the most dangerous horse in all of horse racing is the speed horse nobody respects, and nobody's going to respect him once again in the Belmont Stakes. So, listen, he's by Arrogate. He's pretty well bred. If you make the argument that he's just finding his best form now, one interesting thing I thought Chad Brown said about before the Derby was there wasn't a lot separating horses like Domestic Product and the best horses in the field. And we've had Mystic Dan and Seize the Gray win the first 2 legs of the Triple Crown. So I'm not counting him out, Vance, from winning the Belmont.
I'd be a little more suspect just because of the type of trip he got in the Preakness. Those are often, for me, bets against next time. And, of course, the competition's just going to be a lot more difficult in the Belmont. You're going to have Sierra Leone, I think, is going to be a solid favorite. Fierceness, some people are going to probably want to give him another chance to show his best race. So it's going to be a lot tougher assignment, I think, for the horses that ran in the Derby and the Mystic Dan types, if he even comes back and sees the Gray, if he moves on to the Belmont.
Well, to wrap up, we've talked a lot of Pimlico. I wanted to mention the Grade 3 Louisville that was at Churchill Downs during night racing this weekend, and Segoy got an upset win over heavily favored Bold Act out of Charlie Appleby's barn. Now, Bold Act just failed as the favorite in the Elkhorn 2 starts back to stablemate Silver Knot, who then came back and won the Manowar Stakes. Kind of thought, staying on the turf, that it should have been an easy win for Bold Act, but of course, we got an upset instead by a horse that was claimed for $50,000 from Rick Hiles last month at Keeneland, claimed by Mike Maker, and then came out and wins a Grade 3. His Brisnet speed figure jumped to a 101 after he recorded an 85 in this claiming race at Keeneland last month. So kind of crazy to see. And Mike Maker has done this before with these claimers, but not this quickly. So to come back a month later and win a Grade 3 at Churchill, pretty impressive. And Bold Act finished 4th. I'm not sure what to think about that because I really thought he was just a whole step ahead of the field. He had a Brisnet Prime Power ranking that was 20 points higher than any other horse in the field. So not really sure what's going on with Bold Act, but congrats to Segoy and Mike Maker. Very cool to see them get this win here. And the Grade 2 United Nations at Monmouth on July 20th, maybe next in the picture. So we'll see what happens there. Y'all give Segoy a chance in the United Nations?
I don't know. I mean, that race might not be that tough. So maybe I'd like to know first off, how many horses has Mike Maker claimed and won graded stakes with? I mean, this could be the 50th. There's been so many of them. It's just been crazy. And secondly, I can almost, you see Julian Leparoux on a lead. You don't expect to see that. He just lulled him to sleep. I thought that was a really good ride by him. And Bold Act has just not gone on like I thought he would. He looked so good winning the Sycamore last fall, and he won that Dubai City of Gold pretty nicely earlier this year. I could give an excuse to the Elkhorn because I thought he had a troubled trip, but no excuse here whatsoever. So, Vance, I just don't think he's gone on this year.
Yeah, and I wonder, the course did get a lot of rain on Friday, so I wonder if that had any effect on Bold Act's performance at all. But going back to the Maker thing, you're right. He's done this dozens and dozens of times, it seemed like. And, this is a handicapping factor that bettors need to be aware of, especially when a horse like Segoy is staring at you in the face at 19-1. There's no shame in throwing a few bucks on horses like this in these marathon grass stakes with Mike Maker horses that he just claimed. No shame at all on throwing a few bucks on them just in case.
And as you could see with that race replay, Julian Leparoux got away with setting very slow fractions. You had 50.25, a minute 15.81, and then held off a late surge to win. And the final time of, 2:30.37 over firm turf. So, yeah, pretty slow fractions there. But we didn't have a lot of speed in that race, so he got the trip he needed. And definitely interesting to see Boldak just really not show up in that race at all. I totally was wrong. I thought he was just going to have it easy on Saturday. But that's why we bet in horse racing. You just never know what you're going to get. All right, well, that's all the time we have today for the Racing Roundtable. We'll be back next Tuesday with more recap of the stakes action from this coming weekend. And we'll be back on Thursday with the TwinSpires jury with our best bets and fades.